we go, my friends. Here's my message to all of you sales reps out there that are struggling after close to a year and a half now of a really down market. Hey everybody, welcome back. I wanted to bring this message to you today. We've got a ton of new guests coming on in the next little bit. But before we got into that, the message today I think is a heartfelt one. I'm getting more and more and more messages from sales reps. And there's two really concerning baselines in these messages. And the first one is... which is just killing me, is the fact that their company's changing the rules on them midstream. And I thought this was more of a isolated situation, and then now I'm starting to see way more posts from people that are saying the same thing. They're getting more calls from sales reps where their companies are changing the rules, if you will, midway through. And the second one, which I think is even more concerning, is I'm seeing a ton of sales reps, confidence, their personal belief in what they can do being shattered because they're not getting results. And I know, obviously, like, let's call it spade a spade, right? Results are the name of the game in every business you're in. And I could tell you that, since January, since I got back into the industry from selling, I've got 30 years, close to 30 years experience now. And I'm telling you, it's tough as hell. But I also see that this is where, like, the big, for lack of a better term, the big boys get separated from the kids. And when I say that, I mean all due respect to any of you out there that are struggling. This is not a hit on you. But if there's one thing I've realized through my tenure in this industry, it's you keep going. And, motion creates emotion. And a lot of the times, all we have to do is step forward and we get motivation back because we see some kind of progress. And I talked about this on a couple of podcasts over the last little while. But the big thing for me is... I start monitoring different aspects of my business to give myself those incremental wins to keep my motivation going. And I don't care how much of a motivated person you are. At a certain point in time, you get down. This is just human nature, right? You have so many failures, you get down. And what we have to do as individuals is we have to dig deep and find that chunk, that little gold nugget that gives us that motivation. Right? As we build Bridger as a company, it's a tough go. This is and this is one thing that I think we all need to realize. This BS, most of the BS you see on social media is just people pretending things. And call me out on it if you will. That's fine. Don't care. Here's the reality is right now, business is tough. When the pandemic hit, the first thing I did was scream from the rooftops, do not stop selling. And most of you did. Call a spade, right? This is one of the big issues why you're having challenges now is because we always know when the freight market does this, it always drops, right? It's never a small blips. They seem to be really highs and then really lows. And we saw this in 2018 into 19. And so when the pandemic hit, we knew there was a low coming. But the beautiful thing about knowing that is we also know there's a high coming. And hopefully the market stables and then it becomes a stable market for another decade, right? So if you look back, 2019 and 18 and 19, before that it was the economic fallout of 2008 and 9. So we were literally a decade. And these are the cycles. So we've been through it before, my friends. My message to you today is keep doing the things that seem so mundane. Figure out a gamification process. Thank you to my man, Chad, for teaching me that process. Really start to gamify your sales. And when you start gamifying your sales, it creates those dopamine drips, right? I think if somebody tells you they don't need a dopamine drip, or somebody tells you, they can do prolonged, um, tasks or prolonged situations where there's no dopamine drip, I think they're lying. And that's just my personal opinion. Take it or leave it. But, for us as sales reps, I had another conversation with a sales rep this morning. He's like, my company is supportive, which is awesome to hear. He goes, but I suck. And I said, my man, you don't suck. You've landed massive deals before. You've built a big book of business. You took some time off. You got back into the industry, and you got back into the industry in a time where it's just really tough. Like, there's people out there doing great numbers right now. There's companies out there growing, and there's companies out there that are declining. I saw a post from Kevin Hill where it was something along the lines of like almost 15, 20% drop across the board in like 3PLs last year. That's a big number, right? So it's not just you, it's everyone. And I think a lot of the times we go siloed, if that makes sense to you. So when things are happening to us, we think, oh my God, we're siloed. We have like, this is just what it is. It's me, it's happening to. When it's not, it's everyone. You think about it and just put yourself in a traffic manager's position or a VP of logistics position, or go and talk to your customers and say, what is stopping you from communicating with people? And they're all going to have the same answers. So this is what you're up against. It's nothing new. You're not siloed. You don't suck. But what if now, instead of sitting there and having these internal challenges that destroy your productivity, destroy your own personal motivation, just those two things can then destroy your self-confidence, right? Because things aren't happening. Yeah, it's amazing how we as humans, we start closing deals, and all of a sudden we love the industry, right? Because it's that dopamine drip. It's that oh my God, yeah, I got this deal. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, let's go. And so have you ever had that where you close the deal, and then what did you do right after you close that deal, right? Instead of getting back on the phone and getting onto another call or getting back into another meeting, you kind of go and celebrate. But at that point, that's the time to scale up. That's the time to add another 10 times the effort, another 10x effort. And so I'm kind of bouncing around here because I'm trying to get everything out in such a short period of time. But here's the facts, okay? I've got a ton of tenure in this industry. I've helped train and seen a lot of successful people. I've had amazing success in my life in logistics for prolonged periods of time. And I started working with a company in February. And I'll tell you, I jumped back into it, right? Or mid-January, I guess. I jumped back into it thinking, oh yeah, okay, easy peasy. I mean, I know people are having a hard time, but yeah, I can make this. In the 2 months that I was there, I brought in 2 opportunities that never panned out. So in 2 months, 2 opportunities, okay? That means the amount of no's I got was astronomical. But here's the thing. I'm communicating with the owner, and he's saying things like, Dan, your kind of tenure, I'm actually a little shocked, and pretty much saying that I wasn't working. I wasn't, doing what I said I would do, which impacted me as an individual because I pride myself on being the first guy there and the last one to leave. That's been my work ethic since I've been a kid. I do not shy away from work. I actually double or triple and 10x my productivity to make sure work happens, to the point where it's a detriment to my personal life. So with that being said, to me, it was a real insult to hear this. And so over the last little bit since we decided to part ways, I've really been thinking about this. And some of you might say, well, Dan, why would you do that? You're giving this person more influence in your life. And it's not that. It's why did I not get opportunities? What was the nucleus? Because if I figure out the nucleus, right, it's like getting a cut. And yes, if it's infected, you put a Band-Aid on it, it's still going to be infected. So you need to get like polysporin or something in there to destroy the infection, right? It's like having a cold. Having a cold with cold medication is just to mask the symptoms while your body takes care of the cold, right? So it's not addressing the nucleus of the issue, it's just a Band-Aid. So I've been doing deep work over the last couple of weeks, really thinking about this. And I came to the realization that I didn't believe in the company I was working for. Some of the delays, the tools or lack thereof, and a lot of these different pieces were not falling into place. So I walked in with this like, yes, this is going to be awesome. I'm really excited about this. And very quickly, as I analyze, and I'm sure they have their own opinion of me. Okay, so this isn't a one-way street. This is a two-way street, stoplight, stop signs each way. And I think we have to understand that. So there's two things that I want to get across to you today. Number one is, I believe the most important piece of what we do is having belief in the company we're doing it for. Okay? That, I think, is paramount. And I remember Nicole Glenn from Candor telling me, gosh, 3-4 years ago now, I created a course where I wanted to go out to the market and say, if you were to lose everything tonight when you go to sleep and you wake up tomorrow morning and all you have is a laptop and a phone, you lost all your customers, you lost all your contacts, you were starting from zero, what would you do? And out of the 10 people I interviewed for it, and so I interviewed business owners, I interviewed multi-million-dollar producers, I interviewed sales reps that were just coming into the industry, and long-term sales reps that have been in the industry forever and never done $1 million a year in GP. So I didn't want to just select one group of people. I went out to all of them. And the only person that said this was Nicole Glenn from Candor. And she said this. She said, the first thing I would do is find a company I align with. And I went, wow. Because every other person was focused on themselves. I would do this. I would do that. She said, if I don't have the right company that has the belief, the strat, and just like the overall overarching framework of what I believe I can bring and what value and service means to the customers I want to bring in, it will never work. And now more than ever, I realize that. And in building our companies, it's like now that process or that foundation, if you will, has to be built on what is the ideal people we want in the company. That's the mission of the company, right? So that's number one. If for whatever reason you're not believing in your company, it's time to have a conversation. Now, I'm not saying, get up and leave the company at all. And don't get me wrong. I mean, some of you might, and some of you might have to. That's just what it is, because the company and you will never see eye to eye if they believe in X and you believe in Y, right? Like I remember, gosh, a decade ago, probably a decade ago now, I was working for a company. And I was kind of jumping at that point in my career, and I was going from company to company to try and prove some of my strategies, right? And I worked for a company, and we landed a really big deal with a major Canadian U.S. company, and we landed a deal in Canada. And within a few months, we're doing a lot of business, a ton of business, and one day I just happened to get emailed on an invoice to the customer. And it was because my name was the same name as somebody in accounting. So the lady that was sending it just sent it to me by mistake, which is not a big deal. I'm the sales rep on the account. However, I opened the invoice just because it landed in my inbox. So I opened it, and it was in U.S. funds. But the contract did not state U.S. or Canadian, okay, for starters, but it was a Canadian company. So as you know, in this world, typically U.S. companies get billed in U.S., Canadian companies get billed in Canadian funds as a Canadian corporation. Now, at this point in the industry, I know there was a lot of like factoring companies and stuff in the U.S. that wouldn't bill in Canadian funds and all this. But at this point, this is the way it was all set up, right? So and I called the owner and I said, listen, I think there's a problem. They're being billed in U.S. funds. And he said, yeah, they haven't said anything, so I just left it alone. And I didn't like that. I was like, no, you have to build them in Canadian funds. It is not a US thing, it's a Canadian thing. And we got to figure out how much we build them and give them a refund. And this caused a major conflict between the owner and I. And I thought it was resolved, and my bad in the end. I'll take full responsibility for it. I realized that I never followed up the way I should. And maybe somewhere inside of me, I didn't want to follow up because I was embarrassed about what had happened and I wasn't ready to take on that ownership of it. Probably, if I had to be honest with myself, that's probably why I didn't follow it through to the nth degree. But in the end, another month and a half goes by, and then I get emailed again, and it's in U.S. funds. And at that point, I realized I got to get out of here. I can't allow my credibility and my brand to be destroyed like that, because it is a small industry, right? As much as this industry is massive from a global scale, it's very small from an individual scale. So in doing that, I probably, again, I'll take full responsibility. Not probably, I'll take full responsibility. I should have followed up on the nth degree, and I should have just owned it right away and said, nah, this is what we're doing. But I didn't. So I ended up leaving. So in the end, the conversations weren't good. In the end, it was like I just realized that, wow, I thought this was the right person. And it wasn't. So I think we've all been there. I think we've all been at companies where we think it's the right company and then we realize it's not. But, I talk to a ton of salespeople, and there's a ton of salespeople out there that I talk to that are like, I love my company. They're so supportive. And I think especially in this environment, if you're an executive listening to this, if you're an owner listening to this, the most important thing your salespeople need right now is your support. And how can we help? What can we do? And I'm not talking about like superficial, how can we help? I'm talking about how can we really help? What can we really do? And one thing I'd like just to make sure that all of you executives and owners and everybody understand, if your people you're trying to help don't believe you're actually there to help, so if they believe for some reason, whatever, that there's an ulterior motive, you'll never get through to them. So that's number one. Number two, as a sales rep who is probably struggling right now, or as a sales rep, spoke to one yesterday who says, yeah, it's okay, but things aren't happening as fast as I want them to happen, right? Because as a sales pro, as a go-getter, as a really devoted and dedicated, to this industry and to fulfilling the needs of our clients, we want things to happen like this, right? We want to be able to talk to a customer, see they have a problem, and say, man, I could solve that for you. Just give me that, give me the goods. Let's go. And nothing happens, right? So, I can't tell you how many times I've hung up the phone and went, no, hold on, and called the prospect back and said, okay, listen, I must not have relayed that information properly because we're not doing business right now. So here's the deal. And that I believe that if we know we have a service of value, something that we can help this person get better with, I think it's a mandate of ours. I think we're not really giving the market what it deserves, and we're not honoring our duty as a professional sales rep if we don't figure out a way to get these people into our community. So with that being said, as a sales rep right now, you can be very challenged during the day to stop producing, to, well, for lack of a better term, to be just, screw the pooch, do just what you need to do so your motivation or your internal belief in yourself doesn't get shattered. And here's one thing I can tell you is you're not doing anyone any service by doing that. You might think you're protecting yourself, but what you're actually doing is you're hurting yourself. So these mundane tasks, speaking with a gentleman this morning, and he's like, Dan, I feel like I suck. And I said, Are you listening? He says, every day, all day. I said, just keep going, because now is where that separation is going to start happening, right? We're a year and a half pretty much into one of the softest freight markets we've seen. I mean, I think personally it's probably softer than 2008, 2009 fallout of the economy. And the reason I think that is because the entire economy fell, whereas now it's like the freight market, right? And there was factors that kind of saw a glimpse of lights, and we're seeing little ones now. But I do believe now is where the separation is going to occur, right? During the pandemic, you didn't have to be a good salesperson. You didn't have to find new value. You didn't have to find new opportunities in any customer, because everything was coming to you. And I think everyone knows that by now. That's kind of been, a horse has been beaten to death by that, and no horses were hurt in the making of this podcast, just so you know. But in the end, we are going to start seeing separation. So those mundane tasks, those things that you come in every day, those repetitive tasks that seem like they're getting you nowhere, I can promise you one thing, just as I'm sure it's going to get dark tonight, they are getting you somewhere. They are moving your needle. The question is, are you going to keep doing it and not stop 3 feet from gold? You know, if you ever read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, William R. Darby and his uncle, they went out and they started digging for gold, and they found a vein of gold, and they bought all this equipment for this vein of gold, and they kept digging along the line, and the vein actually turned. So they kept digging, and at a certain point they said, "Oh, you know what? Forget about it. This is crazy. I can't make money here." They sold all the equipment. They lost a ton of money, and they sold it to a junk dealer, and that junk dealer brought in an expert and said, "Where do you think this vein went?" And where their last shovel went in, 3 feet from there, was the richest vein of gold ever found in that area. So they sold everything at such a reduced rate. Okay? So your ability, your drive, your desire to serve, is you're selling it at a reduced rate right now if you're giving up. 3 feet from there is your success. It's your personal and professional greatness. And that is the message. Don't stop. Keep going. 3 feet from gold. Get the book, 3 Feet from Gold, from Sharon Lechter and Greg Reed. Great authors, part of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. That book was that, and Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Those two books brought me out of the greatest slump of my life, when I had a brokerage company, close to a $35 million brokerage company. We built it up to $35 million in under 2 years, and we lost it. It had to disintegrate, and it was probably the biggest defeat of my life. But in that defeat, I found a ton of gold. I found a ton of opportunity that brought me to where I am today. And you know what? As much as I've had struggles over the years, every one of those struggles, I never stopped, because I know I'm 3 feet from gold in everything I do. So the question is, are you going to walk that 3 feet, or are you going to stay where you are? And here's the thing. The choice is yours. Choice is very powerful, very powerful. If you choose to let this market get you down, you made that choice. Don't blame it on anyone else. Don't blame it on the market. Don't blame it on prospects. Don't blame it on customers. Don't blame it on carriers. Don't blame it on anything, because it's very easy, because I did it. In 2008 and 9, when the economy crashed, we had to dissolve the company because I lost all desire to be in this industry. I hated it. I was like, everyone's cutthroat. This is just bullshit. You guys are assholes. Everybody's looking after themselves. They're not looking at it. But it's business. This is business. This is capitalism at its greatest, right? Like, hey, there's ebbs and flows in everything. You look at the stock market. You look at, guys like Elon Musk, and you're like, oh yeah, but he's got billions. Yeah. But you know what? In one day, he can lose $4 billion, $5 billion. And if you look at it, here's a great story for you. And I'll end on this note, because I know we're already up close to 25 minutes now. I remember when I started a radio show, and I did a radio show on Voice America Radio. And I went to everyone I knew for sponsorship, because I wanted to advertise for them and I wanted to get my voice out. Plus, I wanted sponsorship for the show, right? So again, call a spade a spade. And I remember sitting with one gentleman, Adam, and he was in charge. He's the CEO of a private jet company. And I said, here's the demographics of the people we're working with. And so the demographics of the show was like kind of in that 150 salary range, 150,000 salary range or commission range. And I brought him all the demographics. I said, like, these people are perfect for your audience. And he says, Dan, he says, I know it seems like that because they're in the upper echelon of, the top 5% of earners. He says, but here's the thing. My market is people that, he said, let me put it to you this way. So would you ever think twice about going out and buying like a Big Mac meal or a like Whopper meal deal? And I said, no, not even think twice. He goes, okay. The clientele I deal with, that's how they think of renting a jet. I went, what? He says, yeah, the 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand, 60 grand, 100 grand that these people spend on jets. He says, like, it's the change that we would go to McDonald's with. And that was a really big turning point for me because I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, come down. So he brought me down into the flight area, or I guess the flight control center, I guess for lack of a better term. I don't know what the technical term is for it. And he started pointing out the jets. And he's like, Aerosmith is on this one. And I went, no way. And he goes, yeah. He goes like, this is what I'm talking about. This is the demographics that we work with. So we're all on these different levels. And it doesn't mean any of these people are any greater than you. Can you have that success? I truly believe you can if you put your mind, energy, effort, and 100% dedication to it. But it's the dedication piece that I think a lot of people are missing. And that dedication piece that says, I am going to do this. I'm going to take the next 36 months of my life and I'm going to devote everything to this and I'm going to make the most out of it, because it does not take long when you look at the overall spectrum of life to create massive change, massive wealth, and massive personal and professional success. Whatever that means to you, whatever your version of it is. Right? I'm really dipping into this, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal from Earl Nightingale. But whatever that is to you, it doesn't take long to do it, but you have to be devoted. That means 100% devotion. I mean, if you have to, no vacation, no anything. Like, this is what you need to do. If you're building a business, then don't go out and eat friggin' bonbons and sit by a pool and expect to do anything. It's bullshit. You're kidding yourself. So you gotta be in it to win it. And you got to be dedicated, and you got to have the desire to 10x, and you don't stop. And I think a lot of you right now have stopped. And don't get me wrong, this isn't Dan's preaching, he thinks he's better than us. It's not. It's fucking tough not to stop, right? Like, it's so tough because you're like, oh man, is this right for me? You second guess yourself. Like, I mean, I think we've all been through it. And anyone that tells you they haven't, I think is lying, and they'll lie to you about anything else as well. So that's the message, my friends. Don't give up. Be the person you strive to be. Sit down. And even if you have to take 2 hours today and just think, like, where do I want to be in 3 years? Where do I want to be in 5 years? What is that big goal? And what am I willing to invest? And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about time, energy, effort, dedication, perseverance, stickability. All of those things are investments in yourself. What's the commission at the end, right? And I don't mean money is commission. Commission is everything, right? It's like the dating and courting and everything with my wife when we were dating. The commission is I've had 17 years and plan to have as many more as I'm alive with the greatest woman on the planet who loves me, who honors me, who cherishes me, this is the commission. It's not monetary. It's emotional. It's physical. So there's more than just a monetary commission. I remember vividly one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in this industry was when we helped a customer eliminate close to $2 million in demerge. And the whole thing was, Dan, I have not got a bonus check in 7 years because we have just had such a incredible amount of demerge. And watching him get his first bonus check, because we were able to eliminate all the demurrage, and watching what he did with it and how it helped his family was one of the greatest achievements I've ever had in business. Sorry, let me rephrase that. In business. And that wasn't monetary. Sure, so I apologize. Yes, I mean, obviously I was making money on the account, but that achievement wasn't monetary for me. It was monetary for him. He's the one that got the check. But I'm the one sitting on his deck watching his kids play in a pool. And the smile on his face was something I'll never, and I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I mean, I'll never forget that moment in time. That was enough of a commission. If I didn't make a dime on his account for the next 6 months, that was enough of a commission. And I guess that's the big question. Is that where your head's at? And sometimes it can be, listen, I've been there, done that, my friends. I was out of commission for close to 2 years with no income. So I understand what struggles are. Don't get me wrong. Okay? Regardless of how much success you've had, there are challenges that come into your life that take you off of, quote unquote, your pedestal, if you will. So I get that. This isn't a person standing somewhere that's not, I'm in the trenches with you right now. And I understand what you're going through. I really do. Hence the reason I started the show with, I started selling back. Trust me, I get it. And don't get me wrong. I see people in Bridger, right? Having massive success, closing massive deals, sending me emails and texts and saying, hey man, yeah, oh my God, I'm doing all this. And trust me, I sit back and I go, why am I not doing that? Right? I think it's natural for all of us to do that. So you're not alone in everything you're doing. If you want, reach out, get a hold of me. Let's have a conversation, because this, I think, is a key aspect to our lives in logistics right now. Until next time, my friends, go out there, make every call educational, and crush your sales. Remember, do the mundane. Keep going. It will pay off in the end. Take care.